Dan Schuffert with RKON Corporation. Maybe you could kind of walk through your title, what your role is, and introduce everybody else down the line.
Sounds good, Jeff. Can everybody hear me? All right, perfect. And my name is Dan Schuffert. I'm VP of IT for RKON Risk Business Technology, which is actually an IT organization over 2 divisions inside of RKON. So we represent over 50% of the revenue and about 50% of the IT spend. To the left of me is Shawn Hearn. He works for me at RKON, and he is probably the primary interface with RKON and Arborseed and some of the other vendors we have here. I've got Tony Clary from Arborseed Consulting. Tony heads up the European division, and we're fortunate enough that he was able to fly in from Warsaw, Poland this week.
Thank you, Tony.
And then Dave Fuller, who's also a founding partner of Arborseed, and he's the CTO. He's the technical genius that probably relates better to Shawn, and to be quite honest, I usually glaze over, right? I don't understand what he's talking about. Also, I don't want to forget we have some RKON colleagues out in the audience, sitting at the table there. Mike and Tim, raise your hands, please. They're part of the shared services organization, or the central organization, and the networking team. So we rely heavily on those two.
So Dan, maybe what we could do is start off. Why don't you frame up at a high level the overall initiative strategy that kind of walked into this, and just kick it off where you think is the right spot.
All right. So I'll give you a little context. What I'm talking about today represents one major program in a division of RKON. Doesn't necessarily represent holistically RKON or the strategies that IT does there, but it's a direction we're going in, right? So you're seeing one small example. And I'm not going to go through bullet by bullet, right? That's pretty boring. So that the bullets are up there for reference, and I'm going to talk about it, we're going to talk about it, and feel free to ask questions. Do realize we only have probably 27 minutes left. But we do have a suite reserved later where Dave, Tony, Shawn, myself will be up there. So if you want to deep dive or really get into anything deeper, we're more than happy to share everything we can with you.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys doing that. As we dug into this case study, there were so many pieces of this that were usable. They could be their own discussions on themselves. I asked them if they'd be available for discussion later. So we'll announce that, and anybody that wants to join a group discussion, we'll be able to set that up later.
Right, and part of the theme of what I wanted to represent here is a lot of the challenges I have when I lead these IT organizations. So typically when the business comes to us and they want to do something new and innovative, right, they want to provide more value to their internal or external customers, we're excited to help them. So the journey started out with the internal IT teams, more than happy to help them, but I wasn't confident that we had the right solution. Right, and some of the issues that I was challenged with, for example, in this particular example, we had a requirement to create a massive parallel processing type system, right, focusing on GPU technology. So when I went back to the very smart and capable teams inside of RKON and said, hey, we've got this opportunity, they're thinking 4-core, 6-core CPUs. And in reality, the business was asking for 800-core type processors, 1.2 million core processors, things we just didn't know about. So our first part of this journey was actually architecting and creating a solution that met the requirements, but it wasn't optimized, right? It didn't give us advantage over some of our competitors, didn't let the business achieve the margin they needed to because the IT cost was too high. So I started peer reviewing with companies like RKON, Arborseed. Hey, this is our requirements. This is the strategy around what we want to do with the business. Here's what we architected. Can you give us some tips? So, everybody still hear me? All right. So the challenge was creating a fairly innovative technology at the time, providing value to the business, and still keeping the internal IT teams happy. Letting them know that they're still providing value, but giving them an opportunity to learn more, right? So they're more satisfied with inside of RKON, in addition to RKON's getting more value out of them. So it's pretty complex, multi-dimensional thought.
Not only were you innovating, but you had to be efficient right on almost on the first cut because of the cost requirements. You're essentially reselling something to your clients that was based on this system, and this is your cost basis.
Oh, absolutely. So I'm not going to get into technical details because I probably wouldn't represent it right, but I'll give you a high level. So the team architected the solution I talk about. It was very client-server based. It was high-touch, VPNs into the customer. Would work, satisfy the requirement, but probably not the right solution. So I ran it past Jeff's team, ran it past the Arborseed consulting team, and they came back and said, what is this, right? Let us do a whiteboard session, and we'll help you refine the design. So this was actually in another country where this was developed, so we flew everybody to this other country. We created a war room for 2 days of whiteboarding with part of the team and more here. And what came out of it is we completely threw away the whole design that we originally came up with. Actually then started down the journey of a slightly higher priced initial cost, but much higher value and the opportunity to let the business drive a better margin over a period of essentially 3 years was our model. And at the time, we had no idea what cloud was. We had no idea that we are heading in what the proverbial cloud direction today, but that's where the journey took us. So part of the elements you see on the screen, right, we're looking for cost effectiveness, and at RKON, or at least in my teams, we measure that by value, not the lowest price. Right? Because typically when I get lowest price, somewhere else I'm paying for it. So I got to find the best value.
And I think your case is really one of the better examples of the business, how IT's cost really is aligned with delivering value to the business. And value to the business is what can you charge your clients and what your clients are willing to pay for something. And I think that taking that into equation allowed you guys to expand the scope of what you put on the table and develop a better solution.
Absolutely, right, from a dollar perspective. But then we also have to provide value to our customers, which are internal, on what strategies can we give them that they can market, right, out against our competitors, that their customers come back and say, wow, we really like what RKON doing. It's different. There is a differentiator. We can't duplicate that internally without a lot of effort. Right? A lot of cost. So that covers the value. This needed to be highly secure. So, by contract, I can't name the customer that launched this, but they're a highly secure customer in the financial market. And in addition to the typical SAS 70 type scenarios and audits that you do, we had to have an external third-party CPA firm come in and audit what we created inside their data centers. Right? Highly redundant. Which was new to us at RKON at that time. So, looking at non-traditional ways of backing up data, hot data centers, which we would have had great difficulty in architecting, and that's where RKON really shined with us. And it was interesting because I learned more about RKON through this journey too. I always thought of RKON as my firewall guys, right?
Well, we were your firewall guys.
Well, you were, and they were very successful at it. But I didn't look at RKON at what they could really provide, and that's what part of this war room and the strategy did for us. So RKON was popping, I don't even know what firewalls all over the world for us. As they were going through the war room, and Jeff, Mark, other members of the team, Jeff Laurinaitis was key. Chris, there's a bunch of them here. I was seeing the additional value that I should have been leveraging with this partner that I didn't even know existed. Right, so there was a learning opportunity for both of us. The environment itself too was a high financial penalty to our external customer. So it's dealing with external markets. It's dealing with publicly traded stuff. So during those hours, we couldn't have any outages. The perception to the people we're delivering the service to is it had to be up 100% of the time, right? Or at least the data centers or our connectivity out, which you can never have technology up 100% of the time, but the delivery of the service you can get pretty close, right, with the right redundancy.
And from our perspective, the feedback from the team was, this is brand new technology. We're rolling out something that nobody's ever done before, And there's a heck of a lot of requirements to wrap around this thing, including costs that set the parameters on this. And that was probably the biggest challenge, was operating within those guidelines to produce something high quality for all of us.
Absolutely. And for the business, it was a journey too, right? That was part of our initial challenges. We were dealing with new innovative technologies. They were, being requested, as I talked about earlier, to in-house IT, where over the years they lost some of the skill set because they hadn't been exposed to what was happening out there, which is driving different behavior in AON to help keep these people educated, right? New service levels. Typically in all the historical services we offered to our customers, we had wiggle room, right? We could be down for a little bit. There were other ways we could deliver it. Here we were financially regulated by several different countries, many different regulations, and enhanced response agility. AON, for example, North America is outsourced to CSC, right? You make a phone call, you wait 24 hours, you get an email, and 3 to 6 weeks later, somebody finally fixes what's wrong. That's just the way it works. This wasn't going to work for this internal customer nor our external customers.
It was a speed to execution issue.
Well, we needed near real-time response.
Right.
And typically there's a large cost with that, but we were able to architect a solution, really with the help of RKON again and Arborseed, that we were able to put automation in place that over a small period of time, we were able to automate, for example, alerts, things happening in the environment, or the combination of things happening, that we knew when something was going to fail before it happens. We knew when we were going to have an outage. We can even predict when we're going to fail over, which puts us in a proactive approach in communication as opposed to the reaction. I have a question? Sorry. I'll talk louder too. All right, can you hear me now? Good. I feel like a Verizon commercial or whatever that is. All right, and a big one that I'm passionate about, but often it gets forgotten in IT, is the traditional intake and governance processes. We put strong intake and governance around this, that was meaningful. Often you get processes or governance that you have to go through the ropes. It loses its meaning, right? It adds that delay I was talking about, that fully outsourced environment. So it's dynamic, it's reviewed periodically, frequently, and it's designed to adapt. Business unit. This was really interesting, right? Because the business unit clearly didn't understand the IT challenge, yet they had every vendor in the world saying, no problem, right? We can create this for you real quick, just give us a little bit of money. Well, they could do something tactically right, but the whole solution, it was a misnomer. They were pressured by the competition, right? AON is very competitive. We're fortunate enough to be number one in most of the markets. When you're number one, right, you have only one way to go, and that's down, right? So you have to sustain that standing. So we had a lot of pressure there. Lack of confidence, right? Quite often internal organizations inside of AON, which grew by acquisition, lack confidence in IT for different reasons. Some of them valid, some of them perception. So that was an additional pressure. And they didn't know how much to pay for it, right? Nothing like this had been created inside of AON. So our traditional ways of budget plan, forecasting, the governance around getting the money, we had to change that. So that really sets the context of how we started the journey. And I'll pause real quick to see if there's any questions on anything I've said so far. Yeah?
You know what? I did have one question. How did you had an existing relationship with RKON, but how did Arborseed come into play here? Were they also a partner of yours?
Yeah, it's interesting. It's relationships. They were not a partner at a time. And actually, you're hearing me talk about the key vendors today, that the people actually help drive the strategy or help drive other vendors. So we had a third-party offshore development organization sitting in Eastern Europe called LX. And LX introduced me to the people here at Arborseed. So, to be quite honest, we bumbled into, right, the partnership that we eventually started valuing. In the journey, right, the initial architecture is we contracted data centers, we bought our own hardware. In this particular case, we used IBM, which is not an AON standard, but they had an offering that fit the NVIDIA GPUs. Very expensive. At the time, it cost us close to $300,000 for us to do a demo for a customer, right? Because we're running processing time, we're in a heavy regulated secure environment, so we have to do a lot of duplicity. We can't leverage. Jeff, you have a question?
No. You want to use that?
All right. Ooh. All right. Which, that was the first couple of years. And as we're refining, we're looking at ways to go ahead and lower the cost, still provide value or more value, and we cannot introduce more risk. We started looking at the private and public clouds. Pier 1 is a partner of ours where we're hosting this. And Pier 1 was very innovative with us on a private cloud strategy, even their public cloud. And part of the innovation that RKON, Arborseed in particular, helped us with is there was a whole cycle of from hardware manufacturer to distribution to the third-party hosting, which is Pier 1, back to the customer. So we had NVIDIA, for example, who was providing the hardware that was the key to the solution, was willing to give us a very substantial discount if we branded our dashboards with powered by NVIDIA. So that was perfect, right? We got legal, we got contracts, we got everything signed up. Unfortunately, the savings that got passed to the distributor never made it back to us. So that started the cycle of other negotiations with the distributor. So they would get exclusivity from NVIDIA around AON initiatives, along with passing, that substantial reduction to their customer, Pier 1, and then Pier 1 being able to actually reference us, then pass that savings on to us. So that gave us a competitive advantage that even as our technology stack and what we were doing started leaking out to the market, it would be hard for somebody to duplicate and still make a profit with that architecture.
Because your concern was these are widely available technologies that all of your competition eventually would figure out what you were doing.
Absolutely. And part of the value to our customers was nobody else in the world was doing what we were doing yet, but anybody could copy it, right? It's just a matter they had to figure out what was going on. And this is a Monte Carlo simulation type exercise. So, and they would have to have smart people that could figure out how we were using that Monte Carlo functions. So, which drove us to where we're at today. Oh, and I should give you a financial example. So we went to about $300,000 to do a perfect 5 minutes. A POC, which the business insisted is not proof of concept, because the concept's proven. It's proof of capability. So we had to learn a new term, that dropped us down to about $100,000 per POC. So now business development is becoming more manageable, but still a lot of resistance. That's a lot of money to go out, show something to a customer, hope they buy it. And given the science behind what we do, I've been on many customer visits with that team, and the C-level, who deals real well with the business people on what's going on, literally fall asleep in these meetings when they start explaining the technology. So an interesting evolution is Amazon is now where we're doing our POCs, and that's the year 4 to date, where we're at today. And with the network team, with our security risk management, with our internal audit teams, with this team here, we were able to create virtual solutions inside of Amazon for POCs that with custom development cost us less than $25,000 per POC. And that solved a lot of things, right? It met the business requirement. It built the confidence in IT, for this area at least, with the business. We're helping them now in their strategy, driving more revenue. And often, including myself, we forget a lot is AON's a publicly traded company. The reason we're here is for shareholder value, right? So that's really not the latest technology, not the the latest dazzling thing we give to a customer, but to provide value on those stock shares. And given AON has hit a 52-week high at least once every 3 weeks now, it's working.
So you taking credit for their stock price? Is that what's happening here? Mike, you okay with that?
This one project propelled AON.
Well, I like to believe that, but I don't know if I'd get consensus inside of AON.
You're okay taking a little more time here, so if you
All right.
want to involve Shawn.
Yeah, we'll get to that point real quick here. All right, so this is perfect. So there's financial levers. I don't know how interesting that is. I talked about some of the things that we were doing, right, to drop 300,000 down to about 25. Right, part of the evolution of technology, lower costs are involved in that too, of course. But we would have never gotten there without these two companies and the others. And I'm sure there's other companies that could help us. But the difference for me is RKON has been servicing AON now for 10 plus years. Right, Arborseed has been doing it for about 3 to 4 years, right, depending on the rendition. And it's the trust. I can bring people, the leadership of these companies or their technical leadership. We can go in a room. We can have that circle of trust where it doesn't go out, and we can operate as one team. And the teams that report up through me and Shawn now have changed the way they think about third-party vendors or partners. Instead of them being in competition with our IT teams are getting really well at learning how to leverage them so they become more valuable to the organization by bringing in the right resources that are providing that value. So what I'd like to do now, because we're running out of time, but we can talk later, is lessons learned, really. Shawn is your area, right? So when things didn't go well, I'd say, Shawn, fix this, right? And he does a good job of fixing it. So if you're okay, I'd like to pass the mic to you.
Sure.
All right. In all fairness to Shawn, I don't think he's seen this yet, so that's my fault. All right.
So, from a lessons learned perspective, everybody hear me? From a lessons learned perspective, one of the key areas where I would, I reflect back on where we could have maybe done a little bit better, maybe proactively, is in the area of risk management and security, right? Compliance. So when you're building a solution, such as Dan mentioned, right, you've got a wide variety of people involved, and the focus clearly becomes on the technology and the architecture.
Getting the thing working.
Getting it up, getting it built, getting it. What does this thing look like? But a lot of people actually just hover over the security and audit compliance pieces and risk management. So it was key to have various people from Arborseed and from RKON in that room to keep us in check, right? To keep us in that mindset and that focus of, hey, look, you're veering off here again, right? Get back in here because we've got to keep this thing secure. Remember the requirements from the customer.
And it was also during the process it wasn't just technology security. There was process security that had to get overlaid, and we see these requirements from these third parties that are extremely strict. And some of those things are going to be handled by technology. Some are going to be handled by process. Absolutely. And as you're developing a new system, the nature of the system, there's going to be gaps there that have to be made up by that process. And I think even us determining what was going to be manual, what we could build in, was actually a challenge because we're actually developing a new system to begin with, or a new purpose for the system. So
right. No, exactly. I'm glad you actually brought that up because that's another area, key area, is to implement that process. Holistically and including the security and compliance areas. So as you build processes around, even the governance processes, you've got to consider those areas where you don't normally go, right? Which is the security, the compliance, the audit areas, and ensuring that that process that you implement, whether it be triage of an issue or a ticket, right down to the resolution, right, will for the customer, whether internal or external, what you got to realize and understand that process you build entails that security and audit piece. Right?
What were some of the other challenges that we hit in the process? Maybe in technology or
some of the
cost issues. Cost surprises.
Cost issues I'd give to Dan.
And there were a lot of them.
Yes.
But
as it always happens, right? You do something new, you think you know what it's going to cost, and you get to the end of it, and it's either half or double, and it's usually double.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, there's a variety of other different lessons learned. Aside from the risk compliance area, outside of the process pieces, there was cost. You get to a point where you realize you're down a path that it's going to cost you an absolute fortune, right? When you start reeling things back in, looking at, regroup, look at other options, and then you typically come out ahead.
Shawn, are you comfortable talking through some of the challenges and surprises with Amazon out of the gate? They obviously turned out to be a good partner at the end, but maybe.
Well, I think one of the key challenges with Amazon was SLAs, right? So service level agreements. You talk to Amazon today. Their comment is, well, we're up when we're up. And there's really, we can't guarantee. We don't actually support anything in the health industry that has to be up, all the time. So we don't have any SLAs to provide you to extend to your customers. That was pretty challenging, right? And I think after further discussion with them, and then you get to a point where you have service level objectives as opposed to, key defined service level SLAs. You get to that point where you have an objective in mind, and they agree to that objective. So, you get to the high level, but you don't actually get to the nitty gritty.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got one comment on that too. Hello? Hey. So I've got one comment that was interesting, because one of the things I pride myself in our group and organization, I call it near real-time financials, right? So I know within 24 hours where we're at to the penny, and it was a long road to get there. Where it surprised me in Amazon, where there is no mercy and there is no partnership, is as the development teams were leveraging Amazon to do development, we had one real-world example where somebody on a Friday left some process running that they didn't know was communicating all over the place. In Amazon, is a 2-week billing cycle. So we didn't know that process that had been running right for about 2 weeks from that Friday was generating about $25,000 a day in billing for packets and everything else that was going on. Well, the budget for Amazon was very attractive, right? Because with contingency, we expected to pay about $4,000 a month. So you can imagine my surprise when 2 weeks later I get the electronic bill when I've aggregated $25,000 a day for 2 weeks, and that exposed to a lot of us that Amazon is great for things, but here's the stuff where we're not disciplined enough inside our internal IT development organizations, to safely consume those services. And that's where I really enjoy, and I see the value in companies like RKON, Pier 1, et cetera, where as we're learning how to consume those services and we make those mistakes, I can pick up the phone, call them and say, hey, I need some relief here, right? We didn't know. And they're in a position where they can say, we'll help you, 1 or 2 times. Where Amazon, as Shawn was saying, the only thing they would guarantee me, right, was a bill, nothing else. And that's their position. When our legal spent 9 months trying to negotiate, finally Amazon said, we don't want you as a customer. We have plenty. Go away. So it's a different mindset. No, we didn't, right? But we strategically looked at, we used them as a lever. Where can we take advantage of Amazon without the risk? And it was in something that was highly developed and controlled, which is that proof of capability environment, right? Something we've refined over 4 years, we just do over and over again, but specialized for unique customers' data. So the risk is lower there. And the team is really agile at creating and destroying these things at will now. But when it comes to the deep production stuff where the customers have the security requirements, that goes into someplace more secure. I cannot envision that ever going to Amazon just based on the model they offer us. I see a question.
So Dan, the one thing that I'm often interested in is comparing cloud-based computing environments that don't provide SLA to traditional or more traditional data center environments that do provide SLAs, and whether the SLA really makes a difference. their performances that you're actually dealing with and experiencing, are they comparable to the uptimes that you get, say, from, I don't know, CSC or other different vendors?
Well, yeah, that's a great question, Mike. Uptime takes a different perspective in the Amazon cloud because you're not measuring the uptime of the hardware because hardware is failing on us all the time, but our services continually flow. What we see is a maybe a slight drop in performance as their systems are failing over. And the only reason we know they're failing over is because of some of the deep technical guys on the team are saying, hey, it's on the 20th server today for Amazon, but the service is still flowing. So the lever of what the cost is to keep it going moves right on that service. So I have to measure from the financial perspective, can I take a strategy that's less secure? I know everything's failing, but that doesn't make a difference for the requirements because they're able to deliver the service versus building out in a traditional data center where it costs me more for that value, but I'm getting so much more value I don't need, right? So it almost becomes wasteful for this particular item. And there's a large cost. I believe when you have the internal teams, you have an obligation to those people, right, to send them to school, to send them to conferences, to keep them in a position where they can provide value, right, as they're committing to come to Aon and work for us. So it's unique. Yes?
If you end up choosing Amazon over, let's say, a Rackspace or even any of the Amazon competitors out there.
The question was why Amazon over Rackspace and other competitors?
Yeah, that's a great question, and we are a strong partner of Rackspace, and we are working with them right now. But the main thing for us was the noise factor, right? The business, right? Earlier slide, who thinks they know, what they should do with technology, scream loud enough that for me the path of least resistance for what they were asking for is all right. We're going to go try Amazon. Why we didn't go to Rackspace at the time, and I did give them a call, is they don't offer a GPU solution. So all our CPU usage inside this scenario is really in a Pier 1 or I'd say a colo facility. All the GPU activity is what I'm putting in the cloud right now. Yes, sir.
You mentioned the $25,000 a day burn rate and instilling that discipline in the team. What was the curve you saw on that? How long did it take for the teams to wake up and go, oh man, I've got to be crisper in what I do?
Yeah, that was an interesting conversation. So there's multiple views into that. First there was denial, right? This is what I need to do my job. So we had to find a creative way to get people, collaborative on a journey to help solve the solution. So instead of attacking the developers, I had to get them on board, help me solve it, and just keep them pointed in the right direction. It became a little bit easier for us in this scenario because our development was outsourced in Eastern Europe, or still is, which is other challenges, right? So in Eastern Europe, our footprint is highly educated individuals that really do, I call it Tier 1 development or the innovative stuff, not so good on the run and maintain. They're all mathematicians, right? They're all at least masters, most of them PhDs, and I'm getting them for the same price as India, which I leverage for a different type scenario. So they're also very proud, right? And very insistent that it can't be them. So you just got to bring them all to the table. And in Aon, I had leverage that I'm going to charge back to their departments or this external third party. I'm going to subtract that from their bill. So their leadership also helps solve that. But the technologists, I think even today, are saying, oh, it's a waste. We shouldn't have it on Amazon because I need to do these things. And they may be right, but we don't see it that way.
Why don't we curtail the rest of this conversation? I'd like to continue this. We've got some space available, and we'll announce. But there's a big Q&A around working with all your cloud providers and what you learn from all of them. And I've learned a lot actually from it, even for our solution where we fit and where all the rest of them fit. So we're going to announce a little time probably around lunch where we can if there's more Q&A, we can sit with these guys and dig into it, because I think of all topics, this is probably the one that's going to really solicit. It's on where everybody's in the room's on the brink of being asked to do this or do this, and they've got real world experience walking through this, and we could probably spend 8 hours on this. So,
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
and just for some context on that breakout, that's where Dave Fuller, the CTO, is here to really get technical for anybody who wants to do that. And it doesn't have to focus around what they're doing for Aon, but I think just the technologies and strategies in general. So
Yeah.
it's whatever you want.
So sorry to cut it short, guys, but we'll pick up this conversation. We'll announce a little one-on-one session, Q&A, a little bit later. So thanks for
Thank
your
you for
time. I
listening.
appreciate it.